to come 2 months at a time, and the second 2-month group that we received was a little bit higher than the first one. So, I think we might have picked up, that indicates we might have picked up a student. So, maybe, when we do the next monthly report, we'll see a little bit of a positive shift there. But
all right, thanks.
Still a big nut to make up.
Yeah. And it will be utilized, I'm sure. It's just, I was just wondering where it
It's
might
unfortunate.
be directed. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
No, not me.
Okay,
One question on this report.
Oh, yeah.
Under government miscellaneous and benefits, the workers' comp looks like it's almost tapped out for the year. Is that something that we should be worried about, or is that?
No, because
The payment's already.
right, because we make a payment for our workers' comp and our liability insurances on a quarterly basis.
Okay, so we're on target with that.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make
Because
sure.
what we do at the beginning of the year is we know what the premium for the entire year is going to be, so we actually encumber those funds.
Okay.
And then as we make the payments, the expenditure goes up and the encumbrances
Okay,
decreases.
good. I just want to make sure I didn't have to worry.
So I have a quick request of you, Anna, and then I'll call like a 5-minute break. For next month's meeting, as we begin the budget process and presentations, Mark mentioned a number of municipalities that were looking at a 10, 11, 12% increase in their budgets. But we did notice that Old Lyme has a flat budget this year because they refinanced a lot of their long-term debt. Can you,
I think it was the school. I remember reading the school, but I don't know on the
Yeah,
town
it was the
side.
school. It was the school that was flat, I thought.
so can we, so I'm reading into, in a declining interest rate environment, there might be an opportunity to refinance some of our debt.
Well, we already did that in August of 2019.
Right. So here we are, do we have to wait? These are questions for you. Do we have to wait every year and do it in August? Or, a lot of times people will refinance a mortgage if they're going to get a 1% break on their interest rate. So what are the rates that we're paying? What are the market rates currently? Do you think we can do better?
So how it works is when we do,
I don't want you to
Oh.
answer this now,
Okay.
but it's something that I want you to think about for next month when we begin the budget deliberations.
Okay.
Given the significant increase that we're looking at, I think it warrants some research into, whether we could save on some debt obligations. So with that, I'll call a 5-minute break and then we'll regroup.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. We are
Just didn't know what he's trying to say here.
okay. Returning from break, and we left off at the,
New business, I guess.
new business. So we did,
Huh? Yeah. Yeah.
so we did approve the draft version of the audit already, so we'll move on to the proposed budget review meetings. Does everybody have the schedule in front of them?
It's here, it's pretty. It's pretty font, yeah.
I will, in the old business, discussion of proposed budget process, I will speak to you about what we do in each of these meetings and what's currently happening for the first timers, just to get a better idea of the whole this is the process that I wanted to talk about. I know we talked about your
Oh, right,
process
right,
last
sure.
month, but I wanted to, go through the actual steps of what's happening. So I know that Karen, Zmitrik, and Anna and the department heads worked on this extensively to try to put these meetings together. At the last meeting in January, we did ask if anybody had any vacations. No comments were made about being, missing any of the dates in March, so this looks good to me. If it's good for everybody else, we'll make a motion to approve.
So you know I won't be here on the 23rd and the 26th.
I did not know that. Thank
Yeah,
you for.
I was pretty clear with Anna and Karen that we couldn't have meetings that week. I'm gonna be traveling. There's a lot of other dates on there, on the schedule. We generally, you can go right up through to the budget hearing, right? I don't know, when does the budget have to be done? I don't know whether we have to cram everything in March. It's really,
Well, we have the public hearing on the
On the
27th,
27th.
so we have to have.
so you're
we have
gonna
to have it
rush through this
complete.
process and it's gonna sit 2 or 3 weeks.
Are we
right?
gonna rush through it, really? I mean,
Well, you're-
doesn't the Board of Selectmen take 2 or 3 meetings to get through all of these?
4.
Right, so we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings.
Cramming them in.
I don't think it's cramming it in, really. I think it's, an effort to free up some time so we can take some vacation at the end of March. If we so desire, I think, that's our prerogative.
Okay.
So, I appreciate your letting us know that you won't be here. I trust that you'll send the deputy first
No,
selectman.
you won't be coming either.
Okay, the department head.
Department heads will come. Some of these I'll
Okay.
have to scratch and push to another meeting because they're a little bit more complicated and I'd want to be there. But most of these will come on those nights.
Okay, very good. So, does anybody have any questions, concerns? Does it look good? Should we move to approve it?
Looks good now.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the Board of Finance budget review meeting schedule for 2021.
I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Denied. Motion carries. Opposed, not denied. Okay. With that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is old business, public safety building project update. Ann Santoro's a member of that committee, and I've asked her to give us an update on that.
Yeah, let me just move a little closer here. Okay, perfect. So, Public Safety Vision Committee, we actually met last evening. We are basically in the real final steps, completing those final steps, allowing the town to go out to bid for the project. We have 100% construction drawings from Silver Petroselli, the architect. The fire marshal, John Way, and our building official, Mr. Way also, are in those final reviews. They've been reviewing and going over and meeting. There's been lots of activity on their end with the architect. So that's very good, and I'm just so happy to have our fire marshal in place, because especially at this critical time where you do need those reviews. The architects, we're hoping, maybe within a week or so, just to begin that process where the architect will be, like, I guess, assisting the town, whether it's through Anna's office, Bill Shear, the town attorney, sort of little group of these individuals to put the bid packets together. So, and as I mentioned to you all previously, the architect is responsible for, I'll say, quite a high percentage of those documents that actually go out to bid. There's front-end documents from the town side that accompany all the construction drawings and so forth. So, and that's what we work on this side, on the town side. Not sure about that response time once it does go to bid, and it will go out to bid through the state site, the DOS site, so we won't be expending extra money for advertising costs, so that's a good thing. And that is really what contractors look to. They're not thumbing through the newspaper for the most part for job opportunities. The time from advertising for the project and getting bids in, that's something that will be worked out with this team that I just described. It could be 30 days, it might be less. Looking at the time schedule, looking down the pike, it looks like, we're, through this process and then construction and then sign off and then move in. I think we're kind of looking for perhaps like a late fall or fall occupancy. It's hard, at this point, once those bids come in, so much more information is even, makes sense, time, whether it's budget or time or whatever. So the Vision Committee's sort of last task will be to assess those bids when they do come in, evaluate them, and we'll use standard practices as we did for picking the architect, same type of thing. We'll pick a contractor and make a recommendation at that point. When that does happen, we'll also have a even more accurate understanding of the financials, which we can direct to the Board of Selectmen and perhaps ultimately to Board of Finance. I won't get into a lot of that most recent updated cost estimate because the project is going out to bid. So I mean, if someone really, if someone is interested, they can always get those documents. You can ask me if you need them. But if a contractor, prospective contractor, wants to look at those and go to the meetings, and fine. But I'm not going to get into that right now, except to say that it looks certainly if we were to add the detention cells and Sallyport, that figure of approximately $850,000 has stayed constant through the various stages of cost estimating. We've had ups and downs with base bid. That's the method we're using, base bid. We're doing various deductions and additions to that base bid. So the basic, so a number that that would comprises our base number, considers the purchase of land, the design, the construction, the cells, Sallyport, the elevator, cab, communications, contingencies. It's pretty thorough. Overall, again, Silver Petrocelli has been very accommodating when we've had questions, ideas, whether it was fire protection. We just went down that not so easy road of deciding about, whether we're doing our sprinkler system or not doing that, and using, design and other methodology for fire protection. So, but they were great in breaking down budget numbers and describing the various processes. So I've been really pleased with them, and I feel like they've gone above and beyond, so, and it's not that they're, the clock is ticking every time you may ask a question or phone in. So I've been happy with that. But, so I won't get into the minutia of that base bid right now, but if someone does want to see those documents, just let me know. Because you really need the narrative. I actually asked, in my love of narratives, I asked Brian Cleveland, the architect, to provide a narrative for the budget information, and he did very well, even when it got complicated with various fire protection issues. So I think we're in good shape, and I'm looking forward to it, to it proceeding. We've come a long way from meeting late last winter, it was right around budget time that we started that process of finding an architect. So I think it'll be a very good thing for the police and dispatch and so forth. But any questions? I don't know if I can answer everything, but.
So it sounds like, Anne, because you've been working with Silver Petrocelli for a long time now. If you remember, just a few short months ago, we got hit with an additional $1 million request for funding for the well design, because the architect or engineer that came up with those plans misjudged. Do you feel fairly confident that these architect numbers are going to be what comes back?
I mean,
did you ask him how, is there a margin of error?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I find that if anything, in some of the numbers, sometimes they over budget a tad. Particularly if it's an area that you personally are familiar with, and then you can see, because they're using industry numbers and then based upon your location and so forth to come up with accurate numbers. But anything with materials is pretty clear at this point. I think it's a good ballpark, very good estimate, because I think, and also I know in his most recent narrative, Brian pointed out that when you go from schematic design to construction documents, then you really have that clearer view of cost of things, because you're again refining, and then when you do go out to bid, that's when you're going to get your reality check either way, because that's going to be better than anything that a consultant, the architect, anyone could ever come up with. Once you have those documents and the 7 or 8 folks that respond, companies that respond, that you'll know where you stand. So that's your most accurate, budgeting. But certain numbers have stayed very, very constant, and then others have changed because of fire protection. Changes, or IT room growing slightly, but he's thought of everything, and when he's done those estimates, what I like is he's done the hard costs and soft costs too. So you'll even see things in there like fees that we may not have to really pay, permit fees, but he's pretty much been very detailed. So I think it'll be not difficult to assess that should the committee come forward and say, well, we need more than the existing $5 million to complete cells and finish the project and do the project. So,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have anything to add, Anne, or you're all set?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so thanks for that update. And
Sure.
moving on to the Board of Finance members' discussion of proposed budget process. So if we could pull out the budget review meeting schedule again, and I'll kind of go over what happens in each of those meetings. The Board of Selectmen are currently in the process of reviewing the town departments' budgets. They began this past Monday, I believe, February 10th. And they'll next meet on February 19th, and they'll have a final meeting on March 4th, where the Board of Ed will present the budget to the Board of Selectmen. After that, we are expected to get our budget books at the next regular scheduled meeting, which is March 11th. So I've actually asked to push off the budget reviews to the next week, because this will give you, if we get this budget book on a Wednesday, you'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to review them, get your questions ready if you have any, before we start what will happen is the department heads will come before us and give a presentation of their budget, and that's our opportunity to ask them detailed questions regarding their budget. That takes place over 7 meetings. Ending with April 2nd, we will be hearing the Board of Education budget presentation on April 2nd. The following Monday, we're going to start right away with deliberations. What we do so when we're getting the budget reviews underway, we don't make any decisions during those budget meetings. It's just an opportunity, again, to listen and ask questions, get clarification. Okay. The budget deliberations are where we begin to discuss the details of the budget, and we will begin to make motions to change the budgets or to approve them as they're presented. With regard to the general government budget, we are allowed to make specific changes to the budget as it is presented to us. If we say we want XYZ department to cut their copying costs from 500 to 400, we could make that motion if we wanted to. We could get to that level of detail. I've seen it done that way. I've been more in line with taking the approach that I look at the economic condition of the state, of our town, and I take the approach where coming up with a number that I think our town can afford, the taxpayers, after reviewing all the revenues, and I kind of have a target number in mind of what I would like to propose. Many times I'll have, it's my preference to let the first selectman go back, since he is the CEO of the town, and figure out where those cuts should come from. But I may have a specific recommendation or two. And sometimes a recommendation may be, not a recommendation, but a motion might be to reduce a budget, or it could be to increase a budget line item. Okay, so that's the general side of the budget. With regard to the Board of Education, we've talked about this many times. We can only come up with a bottom line number in terms of what we will move to approve. We have no statutory authority to change line items in their budget. So even if we don't like a certain program that they are gunning for, we can't say we will not fund, for example, that $1 million technology budget. If we cut $1 million from their proposed budget, they may still buy the technology. We have no control over that.
Right.
So we have to be very careful about what we would like the schools to move forward with and what we don't. So there's that. There was one other date I wanted to point out. On February 24th, the Board of Education will have a public hearing on their budget, and that will be at the high school. And that would give anybody an opportunity to go listen to the, ask questions to the Board of Education. So the budgets that you have seen published in the paper are not necessarily final at this point. We are still having ongoing meetings. The Board of Selectmen may have changes to the general side of the budget. By statutory, they have no authority to change or alter the Board of Ed budget, so that comes to us as proposed. But our new thought process from Ann is that we should at least be getting some, they should review it and be providing their thoughts and recommendations to us.
So can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
So the Board of Education, we can only increase or decrease the budget. For all of these other departments, you can make a specific recommendation? Is that what you're saying for everybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all under the town budget.
Okay, so all of these
Right.
Mhm.
besides the Board of Ed, okay.
Mhm.
Got it.
Let me just back up and be more specific about the Board of Ed budget. We can reduce the amount of their increase, but not below what is called a minimum budget requirement, an MBR. So we cannot reduce their budget below what the prior year's budget was. If their budget was $50 million in fiscal year 20, we can't go below $50 million in fiscal year 2021. I mean, you can, but I think that it's a very particular waiver, I don't know what you would call it, but it's going against the, we have to abide by the minimum budget requirement.
Student count. I said student count,
Student account,
the number of students,
yeah,
that's the.
that would be one.
Yeah,
That would be one
There's a
example.
few categories, that you can
Yeah.
fall into.
Right.
And we fall into that more general category of having that minimum budget requirement adjusted up or down for the
Right.
ECS grant yearly. Some, if you're an alliance district, then there's a different, rubric for you. There can be exceptions, for example, like if a whole school closes, or the population, I know this might be the case up in Union, Connecticut, smallest town in Connecticut, where like they're going to lose a ton of kids.
Yeah.
So a more drastic situation happens, and then you can adjust that. But it is definitely your starting point.
Right.
Or you can't go below that number. And it's there to for obvious reasons, so that towns don't
Right.
willy-nilly cut education budgets. And then on the other side, it's a bit of a disincentive, sometimes for planning and budgeting. But and I know that it's at the state level, there are legislators trying to rework the formulas, and it's a lot of it's based on student assessment too. If you have these assessments that put you in a very high category, like top 10 in the state. Actually, one of our schools, was it Niantic Center,
Yeah.
right? Wonderful top performer. And if the whole district were that way or something like that, it might put you in that category where there is no minimum budget requirement, so you could have free range. But because you're doing what you need to do. So
Wow.
in terms of star quality education. So or exemplary or whatever. So that's in that mix too. But from what I understand, unless anything has changed with those student assessment tests and so forth, I think we're still in that general category, that general pot. But our Jeff Newton could elaborate more on that.
Okay, so our deliberation meetings are on Monday, April 6th, Wednesday, April 8th, and Thursday, April 9th, if necessary. Sometimes we can get this done in a couple of meetings. And sometimes we need to get to that third date. It just depends on how far apart we as a team are in terms of what we think needs to be done. If we give the first selectman a bottom line number of what we would like the general government budget to come in and ask him to go rework the numbers, he would go do that, come back before us, and then we'd have to approve